I swear to God, I thought the reason Preston was so calm was because he had a clear conscience. You know that look? The "I'm a successful real estate broker and you're just a high school English teacher who reads too much fiction" look? He had it perfected. Every time I asked why his phone was buzzing at 2 a.m. or why he smelled like cheap vanilla body spray instead of his office leather, he'd look at me with this pitiful, condescending smile. "Dana," he'd say, voice smooth as silk, "you're obsessing again. It's not healthy. Maybe you should talk to Dr. Evans about upping your dosage." He thought he was managing a hysterical wife. He didn't know he was being hunted. He definitely didn't know that while he was playing Master of the Universe, the 74-year-old widow across the street, Lucille, was tracking his movements with better precision than the NSA. Here is how his life imploded, minute by excruciating minute. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. It was a Tuesday, which is scientifically proven to be the worst day for life-altering trauma. The kitchen clock was humming, that annoying low-frequency electric buzz that you only hear when the house is dead silent. It was 11:43 p.m. I was sitting at the kitchen island grading a stack of sophomore essays on The Great Gatsby, correcting the same misspelling of American Dream for the 15th time. The garage door rumbled beneath the floorboards, then the heavy thud of the door, then the footsteps. Preston walked in. He looked impeccable, which was infuriating. Navy suit, crisp white shirt, tie loosened just enough to suggest hard worker rather than drunk. He carried the smell of the outside with him, cold air, expensive car leather, and something else, something faint, like a floral cleaning product or a woman's shampoo that costs $4 at a drugstore. "You're still up," he said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. He walked past me to the fridge, not making eye contact. "I have 30 papers to finish," I said, capping my red pen. "You said you'd be home by 8. He grabbed a bottle of sparkling water, Perrier glass bottle because plastic is for peasants, and cracked it open. The hiss sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. He took a long, performative sip before turning to face me. He leaned against the granite counter, crossing his ankles. The posture of a man totally at ease. "Closing dinner ran late," he said, examining the label on the bottle. "The buyers from Chicago? They wanted to see the nightlife. You know how it is, Dana. I can't just walk out on a 6-figure commission because my wife is watching the clock." "I'm not watching the clock, Preston. I'm watching my husband miss dinner for the 3rd time this week." He sighed. It was a long, heavy exhale through his nose, designed specifically to make me feel small. He set the bottle down with a deliberate clink. "Here we go," he said softly, shaking his head. "I walked through the door after a 14-hour day, busting my ass to pay for this house, for your car, for everything, and this is the welcome I get? An interrogation?" "It's not an interrogation," I said, my voice rising just a fraction. I hated that he could make me sound shrill without even raising his voice. Your phone was off, Preston. I tried calling at 9. He laughed, a short, sharp bark of a laugh. "My battery died, Dana. Jesus, not everything is a conspiracy. Honestly, you sound manic right now. Have you been sleeping?" "I sleep fine." "Do you?" He pushed off the counter and walked toward me. He stopped right behind my stool, placing his hands on my shoulders. He started kneading the muscles there, but it didn't feel affectionate. It felt controlling. "You're so tense. You're vibrating. This isn't normal, Dana. Normal wives don't track their husband's battery life. It's paranoid. It's unattractive." I froze. The smell was stronger now. It wasn't just shampoo. It was stale smoke? No, it was the smell of a bar, but he said he was at a dinner. "I just worry," I lied. "You don't worry," he whispered into my ear, his breath smelling of mints and gin. "You obsess. It's that teacher brain of yours. You're always looking for hidden meanings, like everything is a metaphor. Sometimes a dead battery is just a dead battery. You need to relax. Maybe schedule an extra session with your therapist this week? For my sake." He kissed the top of my head, patted my shoulder like I was a golden retriever, and walked toward the hallway. "I'm hopping in the shower," he threw over his shoulder. "Don't stay up late obsessing. It gives you wrinkles." I sat there for 5 minutes, listening to the water pipes groan as he turned on the shower upstairs. I looked at the essay in front of me. A kid named Kevin had written, "Tom Buchanan is a bad guy because he thinks he can do whatever he wants." "You have no idea, Kevin," I whispered to the empty kitchen. I waited until I heard the shower turn off. Then I waited for the heavy thud of his feet walking to the closet, then the creak of the bed, then silence. I walked up the stairs. The carpet felt scratchy under my bare feet. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Thump, thump, thump. So hard I thought he might hear it through the drywall. I wasn't planning to snoop. I really wasn't. I just needed, I needed to know I wasn't crazy. I slipped into the bedroom. He was out cold, lying on his back, mouth slightly open, snoring that soft, entitled snore of his. I crept to his side of the room. His phone, his real phone, the iPhone 15 Pro Max or whatever the hell it is, was on the nightstand, plugged in. I didn't touch it. He changed the passcode weekly. "Client security," he claimed. I went to the dresser, the tall mahogany one. I told myself I was looking for, what, a receipt? A matchbook? I opened the top drawer slowly. It squeaked. I froze. Preston grunted in his sleep and rolled over. I held my breath for 30 seconds until his breathing evened out. I looked inside. Socks, rows and rows of meticulously folded socks. Argyle, black silk, athletic ankle socks, organized by color. Preston was a psychopath about organization. I reached in, feeling around the back. My fingers brushed against the soft wool of his winter socks. Then I felt something hard. Plastic. I pulled it back. It was a phone. A cheap black Samsung flip phone. The kind you buy at Walmart for $30 in a blister pack. A burner. I stared at it in my hand. It felt greasy, heavy. My stomach dropped so fast I actually felt nauseous. "You're paranoid, Dana. You need therapy, Dana." I pressed the side button. The screen lit up with a harsh blue glow. 11:52 p.m. No passcode. Of course not. Why lock a phone that's hidden inside a ball of wool socks? I opened the messages. My thumb was shaking so bad I almost dropped it. Message 1. Today, 8:14 p.m. "Can't wait to see you. He's being such a drag." Sender, unknown. Message 2. Today, 9:30 p.m. "Leaving dinner now. See you in 10 at the spot. Wear the red thing." Sent by Preston. Message 3. Yesterday, 11 a.m. "Did she buy the late night excuse? LOL. Sender. Sparkles. Sparkles. He had a woman saved as Sparkles. I scrolled up. It wasn't just Sparkles. There was a J. There was a number with no name. There were months of texts. "Be there in 5. Hotel room 304. Don't worry, she has no clue. She thinks I'm at the closing." I felt like I had swallowed a bag of ice. The cold spread from my chest to my fingertips. I looked at Preston, sleeping 5 feet away. The man who had looked me in the eye an hour ago and told me I needed therapy because I was imagining things. He wasn't just cheating. He was managing a logistics empire of infidelity. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone at his head. I wanted to wake him up and smash the cheap plastic screen into his perfect teeth. But I didn't. I carefully placed the phone back between the gray wool and the black athletic socks. I closed the drawer until it clicked. I walked out of the room, went downstairs, and threw up in the kitchen sink. The next morning, I called in sick. I drove to the only lawyer I knew by reputation, Rachel Cohen. She was known as the Barracuda in the teacher's lounge because she had handled the principal's divorce last year and left his ex-wife with nothing but a used Toyota. I figured I needed a shark. Rachel's office smelled like expensive leather and intimidation. She sat behind a desk that was probably wider than my car, wearing glasses that looked sharp enough to cut skin. She didn't offer me coffee. She just listened while I word vomited everything. The gaslighting, the late nights, the burner phone, sparkles. When I finished, I sat back, waiting for her to say, "Got him. Let's destroy him." Instead, Rachel took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. She looked tired. "Dana," she said, her voice surprisingly gentle but firm. "Do you have the phone?" "No," I said. "I left it there. I didn't want him to know I found it." "Do you have photos of the texts?" No. I was in shock. I just put it back." Rachel sighed. It wasn't the condescending sigh Preston used, but it was worse. It was a pity sigh. "Here's the problem," she said, leaning forward. "Iowa is a no-fault divorce state. That means the court doesn't really care why the marriage is ending. Infidelity isn't grounds for a better settlement on its own." "But he's lying," I said, gripping the arms of the chair. "He's living a double life." "I believe you," Rachel said. "But the court deals in assets and debts. Now, if he spent marital funds on these women, hotels, dinners, gifts, that's called dissipation of assets. We can claw that back, but we need proof, concrete, documented proof. Bank statements, credit card receipts matching the dates of the affairs. Do you have access to his business accounts?" "No," I whispered. "He handles all the finances. He says I'm bad with numbers." "Of course he does," Rachel muttered. "Without documentation, this becomes a he said, she said. Preston will claim the burner phone is for business. He'll claim the texts are out of context or fabricated. He's a salesman, Dana. He lies for a living. Without hard evidence, you're looking at a standard 50-50 split, and you'll be paying his legal fees if we lose the argument on dissipation." I felt the tears pricking my eyes. "So he wins? He cheats for years, calls me crazy, and he just walks away with half? Unless you can bring me something better than a story about a phone in a sock drawer," Rachel said, putting her glasses back on. "I can't file for dissipation. I'm sorry." I left her office feeling like I was made of glass that had just shattered. I walked to my car in the parking lot, sat in the driver's seat of my 10-year-old Honda Civic, and cried until I couldn't breathe. I got home around 5 p.m. Preston wasn't there, obviously, probably with sparkles. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat on my beige living room couch, drinking a glass of wine that tasted like vinegar, staring at the wall. I felt paralyzed. I knew the truth, but I was powerless to prove it. Knock, knock, knock. 3 sharp, authoritative raps on the front door. Not a delivery guy knock, a cop knock. I wiped my face with my sleeve and walked to the door. I peered through the peephole. It was Lucille Barnes, my neighbor from across the street. Lucille was 74, a widow who spent her days sitting on her porch in a rocking chair, drinking lemonade and watching the street. I always thought she was just a lonely old lady. She was wearing a beige cardigan and sensible orthopedic sneakers. But in her arms, she wasn't holding a plate of cookies. She was holding a large gray plastic storage bin, the kind you use for Christmas decorations. I opened the door. "Lucille, hi, I'm sorry, now isn't a good—" "Cut the crap, honey," Lucille said. Her voice was like gravel in a blender. She didn't smile. She pushed past me into the living room, lugging the bin like it weighed 50 pounds. "Close the door and lock it." I stood there, blinking. "What? Lucille, what are you doing?" She set the bin down on my coffee table with a heavy thud. She straightened up, cracking her back. She looked around the room, her eyes scanning the corners like she was sweeping for bugs. "I saw you come home," she said, shoulders slumped. "Sitting in your car crying for 10 minutes before you came inside, then sitting in the dark." She pointed a manicured finger at me. "He finally pushed you too far, didn't he?" I don't know what you're talking about." "Preston," she spat the name like it was poison. "The prince of real estate. I figured you found something. Lipstick? Receipt? Phone?" I stared at her. "How do you know?" Lucille walked to the window, peeked through the blinds, then turned back to me. Her face softened, just a little. Your mother, Margaret, was my best friend in Chicago. Did you know that? I knew you knew her. But best friends since we were 15, Lucille said. When she was dying, she made me promise to watch out for you. She said you were too soft, too trusting. Said you married a guy with shark eyes. My throat tightened at the mention of my mom. Lucille, please. I can't handle this right now. My lawyer says I have no proof. Lucille let out a bark of laughter that sounded terrifyingly like a gunshot. Lawyers, she scoffed. They don't know how to work the street. Your lawyer wants proof? Honey, I was a detective sergeant with the Chicago PD for 32 years. Vice and narcotics. She gestured to the gray bin on the table. I didn't just watch out for you, Dana. I watched him. Open it, Lucille commanded. My hands were trembling again. I approached the bin. I popped the plastic latches on the side. Snap, snap. I lifted the lid. It smelled of old paper and dust. Inside, there were no Christmas ornaments. There were notebooks, dozens of them, spiral-bound, college-ruled notebooks, the kind you buy for 99 cents at Target. They were stacked in chronological order. On top of the notebooks were stacks of manila envelopes, clear plastic sleeves filled with photos, and a black USB drive taped to an index card that read, Evidence Log, Preston Mitchell, 24 months. What is this? I whispered. That, Lucille said, sitting down in my armchair and helping herself to my wine glass, is the last 2 years of your husband's life, documented. I picked up the top notebook. The cover said Volume 12, August Current. I flipped it open to a random page. Lucille's handwriting was slanted, sharp, and incredibly legible. Entry, Oct 14, 1942. Subject departed residence in silver Lexus. Plate IA 4429. Wearing gray suit, blue tie. Entry, Oct 14, 2015. Subject vehicle observed at the Red Door Lounge on 5th Street. Entry, Oct 14, 2018. Subject met by female, Caucasian, approx 25 years old, blonde hair. ID Amanda Miller. Physical contact observed. Hug, kiss on cheek. Entry, Oct 14, 2130. Subject and female departed lounge. Entry, Oct 14, 2145. Subject vehicle parked at Motel 6 off I-380. Room 112. Lights out at 22 Xiaozhou. I flipped the page. Entry, OCT 1507 narrate. Subject departed Motel 6 alone. Stopped at Come and Go gas station. Purchased coffee, breath mints, red roses. Note, roses not observed upon arrival at subject's primary residence. Likely discarded or given to third party. I looked up at Lucille. She was sipping the wine, watching me closely. You followed him? I asked, my voice barely a squeak. I trailed him, she corrected. Followed sounds like a stalker. I conducted surveillance. I have timestamps, geotags, and license plates. I ran the plates through, well, let's just say I still have friends in the department who owe me favors. She reached into the bin and pulled out a thick stack of photos held together by a rubber band. She tossed them onto the table. They fanned out. Preston at a restaurant holding hands with a redhead. Preston kissing a blonde woman outside a gym. Preston arguing with a brunette in a parking lot. Preston entering an apartment complex I'd never seen. He has a type, Lucille noted dryly. Young, dumb, and expensive. I picked up a photo of Preston. He was laughing, head thrown back, sitting across from a girl who looked young enough to be my student. He looked so happy, happier than I had seen him in 5 years. He told me he was at a seminar that weekend, I said, pointing to the date on the back of the photo. He was at the Riverside Casino, Lucille said. Dropped $4,000 at the blackjack table, then took her to the penthouse suite. It's all in the financial log. Financial log? Lucille tapped the USB drive. Oh, honey, we haven't even gotten to the good part yet. Lucille pulled a heavy military-grade laptop out of her oversized tote bag. She booted it up. It ran Windows 7, probably for security reasons, and plugged in the USB drive. You know Excel? She asked. I'm a teacher. I live in Excel. Good. Look at this. She opened a file named PM Financial Analysis TexLSX. It was a masterpiece. A terrifying, obsessive masterpiece. It had color-coded tabs. It had pivot tables. I cross-referenced his movements with public records, Lucille explained, pointing at the screen with a pen. I couldn't get his bank statements legally, obviously, but I could track where he spent cash. See this? She pointed to a column of red cells. Every Friday at 4 p.m., he hits the ATM on 4th Street, withdraws $400. Then he drives to this apartment complex. Who lives there? Amanda Miller, dental hygienist, 24 years old. And this? I pointed to a yellow section. That's his business trips to Des Moines. Notice how the mileage doesn't add up? He claims reimbursement for 300 miles, but based on the toll records and traffic cams, which are public if you know where to look, he never leaves the city limits. He's staying at the Hyatt downtown. She clicked a tab labeled Heat Map. The screen filled with a map of our city, covered in colored dots. Green is cheap dates, Lucille said. Diners, coffee, motels. Yellow is mid-range. Red is the premium package. Suspiciously expensive dinners, jewelry stores, high-end hotels. The map was bleeding red. He spent, Lucille adjusted her glasses, squinting at the total at the bottom, approximately $12,000 in the last 18 months on entertainment that we can prove. $12,000, I repeated. He told me we couldn't afford to replace the dishwasher last month. I washed dishes by hand for 3 weeks. Men like Preston always have money for their hobbies, Lucille said. Infidelity is an expensive hobby. I stared at the screen. The data was cold, hard, and undeniable. It wasn't just a burner phone in a sock drawer anymore. It was a forensic accounting of my betrayal. This is... I struggled for the word. This is insane, Lucille. You did all this? From your porch? Porch is a great vantage point, she shrugged. Nobody looks at an old lady knitting. Nobody suspects the widow. I'm invisible, Dana, and that makes me dangerous. She closed the laptop with a snap. So, she said, looking me dead in the eye, you want to cry some more? Or do you want to take this to your shark lawyer and gut him like a fish? The next morning, I walked back into Rachel Cohen's office. This time, I didn't come alone. I brought Lucille, who was wearing a tweed blazer that made her look like Agatha Christie's enforcer. Rachel looked up from her computer, annoyed. Dana, I told you, unless you have... Clear the table, Lucille barked. Rachel blinked. Excuse me? Clear, the table. Lucille didn't wait. She swept a stack of files to the side and dropped the plastic bin onto the mahogany surface. Thud. Who is this? Rachel asked, looking at me with alarm. This is my neighbor, I said. And she brought the receipts. Lucille opened the bin. She began laying out the evidence like she was dealing a winning hand of poker. First the notebooks, then the photo albums, then the USB drive, then the printed spreadsheets. Rachel stood up. She walked over to the table. She picked up a photo of Preston kissing Amanda Miller. She flipped it over to see the timestamp and geotag. She picked up a notebook and read an entry. Subject entered jewelry store, 14 Neo. Exited 1420 with small velvet bag. Bag not observed entering marital home. Rachel looked at Lucille. Her expression shifted from annoyance to shock, and finally to pure, unadulterated professional lust. Who are you? Rachel whispered. Lucille Barnes, Chicago PD, retired 004th District. Rachel let out a low whistle. She picked up the laptop and plugged in the USB. She scrolled through the heat map. She looked at the ATM correlations. Rachel adjusted her glasses. I've been practicing family law for 20 years. I hire private investigators who charge $200 an hour, and none of them have ever given me a file this clean. Amateurs, Lucille sniffed. They rely on GPS trackers. I rely on eyeballs and patience. Is this admissible? I asked, terrified. Is it legal? Rachel laughed. It was a terrifying, joyful sound. Legal? It's public domain, Dana. He's in public spaces. No expectation of privacy on a sidewalk or a hotel lobby. The license plate data, well, we won't ask how you verified that, but the photos, the timestamps, this is gold. This is diamond-encrusted gold. She turned the laptop screen toward me. With this, Rachel said, pointing to the financial correlation tab, we don't just prove cheating. We prove dissipation of marital assets. We prove he stole family money to fund his affairs. We can freeze his accounts. We can demand repayment. Rachel looked at me, her eyes gleaming. We're not just going to divorce him, Dana. We're going to audit him. 2 weeks later, we were in the county courthouse. Preston walked in with his lawyer, Douglas Hayes. Douglas was a guy who wore too much cologne and had a tan that came from a spray bottle. He strutted in like he owned the place. Preston looked annoyed. He caught my eye and gave me a disappointed headshake, like I can't believe you're making a scene. He whispered something to Douglas, who chuckled. They thought this was a standard hysterical wife case. They thought I had nothing. We sat at the plaintiff's table, me, Rachel, and a massive 3-ring binder that sat closed in front of us. Judge Martha Henderson walked in. She was a woman in her 60s with a haircut that said, "I don't have time for your nonsense." Everyone stood. Douglas opened. "Your Honor," he began, buttoning his jacket, "we are here today because Mr. Mitchell's wife has, unfortunately, succumbed to some unfounded paranoid delusions. My client is a hardworking professional. Mrs. Mitchell has made wild accusations of infidelity with zero proof. We are asking for a dismissal of the motion to freeze assets, as it is hindering Mr. Mitchell's business." Preston nodded solemnly, playing the victim perfectly. "Paranoid delusions," Judge Henderson repeated, looking at papers. "That's a strong phrase, Mr. Hayes. It fits the behavior, Your Honor. Stalking his calendar, accusing him of misconduct every time he works late. It's a tragic breakdown of trust, triggered by her own insecurities." Rachel stood up. She didn't say a word. She just picked up the binder, which was about 4 inches thick, and walked to the bench. "Your Honor," Rachel said, her voice cool and crisp, "if I may." She placed the binder in front of the judge. "What is this?" Judge Henderson asked. "Exhibit A through Z," Rachel said. "A comprehensive log of Mr. Wahut. Mitchell's movements over the last 24 months, including photographs, timestamps, and financial correlations to 3 separate extramarital partners." Douglas froze. Preston's tan seemed to fade by 2 shades. Judge Henderson opened the binder. The room was silent except for the turning of pages. Flip. 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 She stopped on a page. She looked at a photo. Then she looked at Preston. She flipped a few more pages. The silence stretched for an agonizing 2 minutes. Finally, Judge Henderson looked up. She took off her reading glasses. "Mr. Hayes," the judge said. Her voice was dangerously quiet. "Yes, Your Honor?" Douglas squeaked. "Your client was photographed entering the residence of an Amanda Miller on 47 separate occasions in the last 14 months." Preston's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He was also documented at the Riverside Inn 6 times, and the ATM withdrawals coinciding with these visits total nearly $8,000. The judge leaned forward. "Would you like to revise your statement about paranoid delusions?" Preston looked like he was going to vomit. He turned to Douglas, whispering frantically, "What is that? How did they get that?" Douglas was shuffling his papers, looking for a defense that didn't exist. "Your Honor, we haven't seen this evidence. This is an ambush." "It's a preliminary hearing for Asset Preservation Counsel," Judge Henderson snapped. "And frankly, the evidence speaks for itself." She looked at Preston with pure disgust. "Mr. Mitchell, in my courtroom, we take a dim view of parties who waste marital assets on extracurricular activities, especially when they lie about it." She banged her gavel. I am granting the petitioner's motion. All joint accounts are frozen effective immediately. I am also ordering a full financial disclosure from Mr. Mitchell. Every credit card, every loan, every Venmo transaction for the last 5 years. Your Honor, Douglas protested. Freezing the accounts will kill his real estate deals. Then maybe he shouldn't have used his business account to buy roses for Miss Miller, the judge shot back. She closed the binder. Next hearing in 30 days. I suggest you get your house in order, Mr. Mitchell, because right now, it looks like it's burning down. Dismissed. Preston slumped in his chair. He looked like a balloon that had been popped. I looked at Rachel. She winked at me. For the first time in 8 years, I didn't feel crazy. I felt powerful. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright Iowa sunlight. The air tasted sweet. Dana, I heard his footsteps running behind me on the concrete. I stopped and turned around. Preston was out of breath. His tie was crooked. The gaslighting charm was gone, replaced by panic. "What the hell was that?" he yelled, ignoring the people walking by. "Where did you get that stuff? You had someone following me?" I smiled. It was a cold smile, the kind of smile Lucille would be proud of. "You spent 8 years telling me I was paranoid, Preston," I said. "You told me I needed therapy because I noticed your phone was off. Turns out I wasn't paranoid enough." "Who?" he demanded, stepping into my personal space. "Who took those pictures? That binder, that's insane. That's stalking." "No," I said, stepping back. "Stalking is illegal. Surveillance is documentation. And you know what? I didn't do it. I was busy grading papers and being a faithful wife. Someone else decided you were worth watching." "Who?" he gritted out, his jaw clenching. I thought about Lucille. I thought about her sitting on her porch with her lemonade, watching him sneak in and out, cataloging his lies because she loved my mother. "Let's just say," I adjusted my purse on my shoulder, "you should have been nicer to the neighbors." I turned and walked to my car. "Dana," he screamed after me, "this isn't over." "You can't just freeze my money." I got into my Honda, locked the doors, and drove away. He was right. It wasn't over, because what we found in that binder was bad. But what we were about to find, that was going to destroy him completely. The high from the courthouse victory lasted exactly 48 hours. Then reality set in. We had frozen the accounts we knew about, but Lucille's heat map had a gap, a big gaping black hole in the data. It was Thursday night. Lucille and I were in my dining room, which looked less like a home and more like a tactical command center. Takeout boxes of pad thai were stacked next to the evidence piles. "There's money missing, Dana," Lucille muttered, tapping a pen against her teeth. She was staring at a printed spreadsheet of ATM withdrawals. I tracked 8,000 in cash withdrawals. But based on his commission statements from the last 2 years, which Rachel subpoenaed, he should have another 50 grand sitting somewhere. It's not in the joint savings. It's not in the checking. "Maybe he spent it?" I suggested, picking at a piece of tofu. "Hotels, dinners." "No." Lucille shook her head. "I calculated the mistress overhead. Even with the jewelry and the expensive steak dinners, there's a surplus. He's hiding a lump sum." She pulled out one of the notebooks. Volume 8. "Here." She pointed to a scribbled entry. "March 12th. I saw him sitting in his car for 20 minutes on the phone. He wrote something down on a napkin. I couldn't see what it was, but later, I found this scrap of paper in your recycling bin when I was checking your recycling." She held up a Ziploc bag containing a stained coffee shop napkin. On it, in Preston's jagged handwriting, was a string of characters, XB99 Wallet K. "It looks like a crypto key," I said, my heart jumping. "Or a password for a digital wallet, if he has 50 grand in Bitcoin." "That's what I thought," Lucille said. "So I spent the last 6 hours running variations of this against known wallet formats. I had my nephew, he's in cybersecurity, look at it." "And?" Lucille tossed the bag onto the table. She looked defeated. "It's not a wallet key, Dana. It's a part number for a carburetor, for his dad's old Mustang. I checked the auto parts catalog. It's a $70 part. I stared at the napkin. A carburetor? We chased a ghost, Lucille growled, rubbing her temples. We wasted 2 days thinking he was a digital mastermind. He's not. He's old school. If the money isn't online, it's physical. He's put it somewhere. So we're back to square one, I said, feeling the exhaustion settle into my bones. He's hiding $50,000 and we have no idea where. We know where it isn't, Lucille corrected. It's not in the bank. It's not in crypto. Which means there's a paper trail we missed, a physical document, a receipt, a deed. She looked at me. Where does he keep the papers he doesn't want you to see? The sock drawer, I offered. We cleared that. Think, Dana. The places he told you were boring. The places he told you never to touch. I froze. His home office, the filing cabinet, he always said it was just messy tax stuff, and if I touched it, I'd mess up his audit system. Lucille smiled, a slow, predatory grin. Messy tax stuff. That's where the bodies are buried. Tomorrow, when he goes to the office to do damage control on his frozen accounts, we're going hunting. Preston was staying at a hotel, the Marriott downtown, according to Lucille's morning text, so the house was empty. But walking into his home office still felt like breaking and entering. The room smelled of stale coffee and that specific musk of old paper. It was a disaster zone. Stacks of listing agreements teetered on the desk. Old coffee mugs with mold colonies sat on the bookshelves. This was the system he claimed I would ruin if I tidied up. Okay, I whispered to myself. Be the detective. I started with the desk drawers. Nothing but dried-out pens, breath mints, and a stash of business cards. I moved to the filing cabinet. It was a 4-drawer metal beast in the corner, locked. I grabbed the letter opener from his desk and jiggled the lock. Nothing. I wasn't Lucille. I didn't know how to pick a lock. I looked around the room. Where does a lazy man hide a key? I checked the top of the door frame. Nothing. Under the rug. Nothing. I looked at the bookshelf. There was a ceramic mug shaped like a golf ball that said World's Okayest Golfer. I lifted it. Bingo. A small silver key. My hands were shaking as I inserted the key into the cabinet. Click. The drawers slid open. The first drawer was client files. Boring. The second drawer was appliance manuals and warranties. The third drawer was tax returns. I started flipping through the hanging folders. 2020 taxes. 2021 taxes. 2022 taxes. Then my hand stopped. Behind the 2018 taxes folder, way back, crammed against the metal wall of the cabinet, was a plain manila folder. No label maker tag, just a handwritten scrawl in pencil. Invi Prop, Confi. Investment Property Confidential, I translated. I pulled it out. It was heavy. I opened it on the floor, sitting cross-legged amidst the dust bunnies. The first document was a deed, a warranty deed. Grantee, Preston Mitchell. Property description, Lot 4, Block B, Okoboji Lakefront Estates. Date of purchase 4 years ago. Purchase price, $240,000. I blinked. I read it again. 4 years ago. We'd been married for 4 years when he bought this. I flipped to the next page. A mortgage statement. Lender, First National Bank. Monthly payment $1,800. Source of funds, auto draft ending in 8842. I gasped loud enough to hear it echo in the room. Account 8842. That was our joint savings, the emergency fund. Oh my God, I whispered. He hadn't just bought a secret house. He was paying for it with my money. I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures. My hands were shaking so hard the first 2 were blurry. Focus, Dana, focus. I photographed the deed, the mortgage statements, the insurance policy listing Preston Mitchell as the sole owner. Then I found the utility bills. The electricity usage spiked every weekend, the weekends he was working. I sat there on the floor of his messy office, surrounded by the physical proof of my stupidity, and I started to laugh. It was a dry, hacking laugh. He didn't just have a girlfriend, He had a whole other life, a waterfront life, and I had paid for the down payment. I called Rachel immediately. "Tell me you're sitting down," I said. "I'm in court in 10 minutes, Dana." "Make it fast." I found a house. Silence. "Excuse me?" "Preston bought a cabin, a lake house, on Lake Okoboji, 4 years ago. The deed is in the file. He's been paying the mortgage out of our joint savings account. The one he told me was for our future children." Rachel let out a sound that was half gasp, half laugh. "He concealed a $250,000 asset and used marital funds to maintain it?" "Yes, I have the papers." "Dana." Rachel's voice dropped an octave. She sounded almost giddy. "Send me everything, right now. Iowa is an equitable distribution state, but judges have discretion. If he hid an asset— Oh, honey, he didn't just shoot himself in the foot. He blew his whole leg off." "What do I do?" "You get in your car," Rachel commanded. "You drive up there. You take pictures of the inside. Prove he's been using it. Look for personal items. Look for her items. And Dana?" "Yeah?" "If you find a key in that folder, use it." I looked back at the folder. Taped to the inside of the back cover in a small plastic bag was a brass key. "I have the key," I said. "Good hunting," Rachel said, and hung up. Lake Okoboji is about 2.5 hours from Cedar Rapids. The drive is mostly cornfields and flat highways. I did it in 2 hours flat. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The radio was off. All I could hear was the hum of the tires and the screaming voice in my head. 4 years. 4 years ago, I asked him if we could go to Italy for our anniversary. He told me we couldn't afford it. He gave me a lecture about fiscal responsibility. He said, "Dana, we need to be building our nest egg, not blowing it on pasta and wine." That same month, that same damn month, he put a down payment on a lake house. I thought about the Honda Civic I was driving. The air conditioning rattled when it went above 60. He drove a brand new Lexus. He told me the lease was a business expense. I thought about the times I clipped coupons for groceries, the times I took extra tutoring shifts to pay for Christmas presents. He was stealing from me every single day. He looked me in the face, ate the dinner I cooked, slept in the bed I made, and stole from me. The landscape started to change. Trees appeared. Blue water glittered in the distance. I saw signs for boat rentals and resort living. I pulled up the address on my GPS. It wasn't a shack. It wasn't a fishing cabin. It was in a gated community. I punched in the gate code I found on a sticky note in the file, 1234, idiot. The gate swung open. I drove down a winding road lined with oak trees. Huge houses sat back from the road, and there, at the end of the cul-de-sac, was number 42. It was beautiful. A modern A-frame with floor-to-ceiling windows, a wraparound deck, and a stone chimney. It looked like something out of Architectural Digest. I parked in the driveway. A shiny black speedboat sat on a trailer next to the garage. The cover was on it, but I could see the name painted on the stern, The Escape. I almost vomited right there in the driveway. I walked up the stone steps to the front door. My heart was pounding a rhythm against my ribs. Liar, thief, liar, thief. I put the brass key in the lock. It turned smoothly. I pushed the door open. The smell hit me first. Cedar wood and expensive leather. I stepped inside. The place was fully furnished, and not with IKEA. This was high-end stuff. A massive leather sectional, a stone fireplace that went all the way to the vaulted ceiling. I walked into the kitchen. Granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, a wine fridge stocked with bottles that I knew cost $50 a pop. I opened the regular fridge. It wasn't empty. There was a carton of eggs, a package of artisanal cheese, a half-drunk bottle of white wine with the cork in it, and a receipt stuck to the fridge with a magnet. I pulled the receipt off. Okoboji market date, last Saturday. Items, ribeye steak, 2 48-liter asparagus, 6-liter chocolate lava cake, 12-liter Pinot Noir, 32-liter total, 98-liter last Saturday. He told me he was at a strategy retreat in Des Moines with the partners. He was here, eating steak, drinking wine, probably with Amanda, or Sparkles, or whoever was on the rotation. I walked into the bedroom, a king-sized bed with white linens. I pulled back the duvet. The sheets were silk. I opened the closet. It wasn't just his clothes. There were sundresses, a floppy straw hat, a pair of wedges, a bottle of Chanel perfume on the dresser. It wasn't a bachelor pad. It was a second home for a second life. I took pictures of everything: the wine fridge, the receipt, the clothes in the closet, the view from the deck where he probably sat and laughed about how gullible his wife was. I stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by the luxury bought with my tutoring money, and I felt a shift. The sadness evaporated. The shock dissolved. All that was left was a cold, hard rage. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I found on Google. Okoboji 24-hour locksmith. This is Mike. Hi, Mike, I said, my voice steady. I need a lock change. Emergency service. I lost my keys. I can be there in 20 minutes. Do you have proof of ownership? I have the deed in my hand, I said, and $50 cash for a tip if you hurry. Mike the locksmith was a burly guy with a beard and a suspicious look in his eye when he saw me standing there in my teacher cardigan, holding a folder of legal documents. You the owner? He asked, looking at the deed. Technically, my husband is, I said. But since Iowa is a marital property state, and I have the deed, I'm the owner today. Mike looked at the name on the deed, then at my driver's license. He grinned. He'd seen this movie before. Rough divorce? He asked, pulling a drill out of his truck. You have no idea. I watched him drill out the lock cylinder. The sound of metal grinding on metal was the most satisfying thing I had ever heard. Zah! Crack. He replaced the front door lock, then the back door, then the garage keypad. That'll be $200, Mike said, handing me a shiny new set of keys. Worth every penny. Before I left, I grabbed a piece of stationery from the kitchen counter, personalized stationery that said, "From the desk of Preston Mitchell," and wrote a note. I propped it up against the bottle of expensive whiskey on the counter. Preston, thanks for the investment property. My lawyer says it's going to be great for my retirement portfolio. Also, I changed the locks. Don't break a window. That would be destruction of marital assets. Dana P.S. You're out of milk. I locked the door with my new key, got in my car, and drove home. I didn't turn the radio on. I just smiled the whole way back. Monday morning. I was back in my classroom teaching Romeo and Juliet. We were on Act 3, where everything falls apart. Appropriate. My phone buzzed on my desk. It was a number I recognized but didn't have saved. Connor, Preston's business partner. I stepped into the hallway during my prep period. Hello? Dana. Connor sounded breathless, panicked. Hi, it's Connor. Look, I just got a call from the bank. The business operating account is frozen. The checks are bouncing. Vendors are calling me. I know, I said calmly. My lawyer froze the assets. Dana, you can't do that. That's the business account. We have payroll on Friday. I can do it, Connor, because Preston has been using that account to fund his personal life. What? No, that's impossible. Preston handles the books. He's meticulous. He's embezzling, Connor, I said. It felt good to say the word out loud. He's been running personal expenses through the company as client entertainment and travel, hotels, jewelry, a lake house. Silence on the other end. Then a quiet, a lake house? Yeah. Check the ledger for consulting fees to a shell company in Okoboji. Check the mileage reimbursements against his actual location. I bet you'll find about $12,000 missing just in the last year. 12,000? Connor's voice cracked. Dana, if he touched the escrow accounts, that's a felony. That's lose your license territory. I suggest you get an accountant, Connor, and a lawyer, because I'm taking my half of everything. If there's anything left of the company when I'm done, you're welcome to it. I have to go." The line went dead. I looked at my phone. 2 minutes later, I got a text from Lucille. "Lucille, just saw Connor pull up to Preston's hotel. He looks like he wants to kill him. Popcorn time." The settlement conference was scheduled for Friday afternoon. Neutral ground, Rachel's conference room. Preston walked in looking like a man who hadn't slept in a week. His suit was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. Douglas, his lawyer, looked equally exhausted. They sat down. Preston wouldn't look at me. "Let's make this quick," Douglas said, opening his briefcase. "My client is willing to offer a 60-40 split of the primary residence, provided Mrs. Mitchell releases the freeze on the business accounts immediately. The business is suffering." Rachel didn't even look up from her laptop. She tapped a few keys. "We're not accepting 60-40, Rachel said, "and we're not unfreezing the accounts." "Be reasonable, Dana," Preston snapped, finally looking at me. "You're destroying my career. You made your point. You found the burner phone. Congratulations. Can we just move on?" "The burner phone?" I laughed. "Preston, you think this is about the phone?" Rachel slid a single piece of paper across the table. It was a photo of the deed to the lake house. Preston went pale. Literally, physically pale. All the color drained from his face, leaving him a sickly shade of gray. "Lot 4, Okoboji Estates," Rachel read. "Purchased 4 years ago, concealed from the spouse, mortgage paid with commingled funds, maintenance paid via embezzled business funds." Douglas picked up the photo. He looked at Preston. "You own a lake house?" It was an investment," Preston stammered. "I was going to tell her. I was waiting for the market to turn." "You were waiting for the market to turn while you were taking mistresses there for steak dinners?" Rachel asked. She slid the receipt across the table. "And while we're at it..." She slid a stack of documents forward. "Here is the forensic analysis of your business accounts. Connor sent us these yesterday. Apparently, he was very eager to cooperate once he realized you were stealing from him, too." Preston flinched. "Fraud," Rachel said. "Embezzlement, dissipation of marital assets, perjury, because you signed a financial disclosure last week stating you listed all assets. You missed a house, Preston." The room was silent. The hum of the air conditioner sounded like a jet engine. "What do you want?" Douglas asked, his voice defeated. He knew it was over. He closed his folder. "Everything," I said. I leaned forward. "I get the house in Cedar Rapids, paid off. I get the lake house, paid off. I get 70% of the retirement accounts. You take the debt, you take the business, what's left of it, and you pay my legal fees." "That's unreasonable," Preston yelled, standing up. "You can't leave me with nothing." "I'm leaving you with your freedom," Rachel interjected. "Because if you don't sign this settlement today, we send this file to the district attorney. Embezzlement? Tax fraud?" "That's prison time, Preston." Preston looked at Douglas. Douglas didn't look back. He just stared at the table and gave a microscopic nod. Preston sank back into his chair. He looked small. The master of the universe was gone. He was just a liar in a wrinkled suit. "Where do I sign?" he whispered. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I was in my classroom after school, erasing the whiteboard. There was a knock on the doorframe. I turned around. A young woman was standing there, blonde, pretty but looking tired. She was wearing scrubs. Amanda, dental hygienist. "Hi," she said. "Mrs. Mitchell or Ms. Mitchell?" "It's Dana," I said, putting down the eraser. "Can I help you?" "I'm Amanda," she said. She looked like she wanted to run away. I think you know who I am." "I've seen photos," I said dryly. She took a deep breath. "I wanted to tell you. I didn't know, I swear to God. He told me he was divorced. He told me his ex-wife was crazy and vindictive and lived in another state. He showed me the lake house. He said it was his bachelor pad. She walked into the room and pulled a stack of papers out of her bag. When I saw the news about the lawsuit, I felt sick. I printed these out. She handed me the papers. It was a log of text messages. Preston, she's totally unhinged. I just stay in the guest room until the divorce is final. Preston, you're the only one who understands me. She's so cold. Preston, don't worry about the money, babe. I've got plenty stashed away. I read them. It was the same script he had used on me. You're crazy. You're the problem. He lied to both of us, Amanda said, wiping a tear. I'm sorry. I feel like such an idiot. I looked at her. She was young. She was naive. She was exactly the kind of person Preston preyed on. You're not an idiot, I said. You're a victim, just like me. I handed the texts back to her. Keep these, I said. In case he ever tries to contact you again, use them. He won't, she said. I blocked him. And I heard he's moving to Des Moines, working for a property management company, answering phones. She managed a weak smile. Karma, right? Something like that, I said. Update. 3 months later. The sun was setting over Lake Okoboji, painting the water in shades of purple and gold. It was freezing outside, but inside the cabin, the fire was roaring. I carried a platter of turkey to the table. Looks better than the dry bird Preston used to buy, Lucille said, holding out her wine glass for a refill. Lucille was sitting at the head of the table. Rachel was there with her husband. And Connor, weirdly enough, had sent a bottle of champagne, though he wasn't invited. We were celebrating my first Thanksgiving as a free woman. To justice, Rachel said, raising her glass, and to forensic accounting. To the sock drawer, I added, laughing. To invisible women, Lucille said, her voice gravelly and serious, the ones they don't think are watching. We clinked glasses. I looked around the cabin. It was mine now. The deed was in my name. The mortgage was paid off thanks to the settlement. I had sold the speedboat to pay for new furniture because I didn't want anything Preston had sat on. Preston was gone. Last I heard, he was living in a studio apartment in Des Moines, dealing with the IRS audit that Rachel had accidentally triggered during the discovery phase. His real estate license was suspended. His reputation was trash. I walked out onto the deck, wrapping my cardigan tight around me. The air was crisp. I thought about the woman I was a year ago. The woman crying in her car. The woman who thought she was crazy. She was gone, too. I took a sip of wine and looked at the dark water. Preston used to tell me I imagined things. He was right about one thing. I imagined a life where I was happy, secure, and free of his lies. And then, with a little help from a nosy neighbor and a shark lawyer, I made it real. I went back inside and closed the door. The lock clicked shut. Solid, secure, mine. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.